I have got 3 boys, and in 2021 they lost their father. It completely rocked our world.
I lost my wife very suddenly in a road collision in 2016. The night that I had to tell the children that they were going to lose their mum etched on my memory.
I think I phoned about 40 helplines. I literally was just like, I don't know what to do.
I would say out of 10 calls we get, 8 of them say, I have no idea what to do next. Do I ring the bank? Do I ring a solicitor? I don't know.
It's the most brutal thing to have to share with your children. It's the worst news that a parent could ever have to impart to a child. Yes, this is terrible news to deliver, but deliver it with the clarity, with compassion, and understand that the person listening to it, this is changing their world, this is changing their brain chemistry.
Every 20 minutes in the UK, a parent dies. That's increased now. It was 22 minutes in the last 12 months. That's now increased. Welcome to the podcast, Death, a Changing Industry. Today, with a great pleasure to welcome Emma, Matt and Michael from Laurelo, Path to Probate. Thank you all for joining me on this call and this interview to learn about your experiences and also to discuss the work that you do at Laurelo. So we're going to go into the sort of personal stories, first of all, of both Emma and Matt. And I'm really pleased to welcome Michael here as well, who will be going into more detail around probate, actually what it is. So thank you, Michael, as well, for bringing your expertise here today. Firstly then, if Emma, if you can start us off, please, to discuss your personal story and how your experiences have shaped the person that you are and it supports the work that you do at Laurelo, please.
So I have got 3 boys. They're now 16, 15 and 10. And back in 2021, they lost their father very quickly after, he was very ill for a short time with pancreatic cancer. And it completely rocked our world, as I'm sure you can appreciate. It changed the way I acted with them daily. It changed the way I lived. It changed everything for us, and it was a real big blur. It was hard going.
How has that experience as well, what you've been through, help you now with the work that you do?
It's made me realise just how important. I think let's talk about how I got to meet you, John, and how I came across you. So we fell into probate. I fell into probate because I was working with Michael. Michael set up Laurelo after a really poor family experience with a solicitor. I had a marketing company, and that was all running well. But my boys lost their dad, and suddenly I was thrown into this world of grief, which I didn't know anything about before. I'd lost my granddad when I was when I was a teenager, but this was like totally different. And experiencing my children's loss and being completely helpless as to what I could do for them, or how I could help them, was just mind blowing. What was really interesting is the different ways that I reached out to the different schools. There were 2 different schools at the time, and I reached out to 2 different schools, and one school was really excellent and really supportive with us, and the other school was appalling and didn't really have a clue. And it wasn't because the schools had a good curriculum or they knew what to do because it was written down in a pamphlet or a book for them. It was because of personal experience by the teachers that had been through similar experiences. And I think what happened is it made me realise just how much of an impact grief has on a family and has on people's day-to-day experiences. And we're watching Michael work in probate made me want to come and join the business and come and help and support people that are bereaved in the way that Laurelo does. And then I came across you, John, and the campaigning you're doing to change education in schools and the impact that has and could have is phenomenal. So, yeah, I mean, there's a bit of a jumbled way of explaining, but that's how I'm so passionate about it now.
No, well, it's really clear to see that, and again, service providers. When I always see exceptional service, there's usually a story behind it which drives that passion forwards, and I think that's very clear to see. So thank you for sort of sharing that. And Matt, for yourself, your sort of experience, and again how that ties into the work that you do as well, please.
Yeah, thank you, John. So I lost my wife very suddenly in a road collision in 2016. At the time, my children were 10 and 12, and was at the time working in marketing, communications and events, and which is a very hands-on role, needed a lot of traveling, and I needed to make a change very quickly because everything was incredibly sudden, and I wanted to be present and there for my children to help guide them through their loss and be mum and dad to them. So I moved into consultancy, which allowed me to be at home more and be present for them. Whether they wanted me there or not is another matter. And so I moved into consultancy, which was quite a natural progression for me. And then a number of years ago, I was introduced to Michael and Emma and began working with them on growing Laurelo. And it doesn't escape me that sometimes our personal lives and our professional lives, come together very neatly, because I find it a profound honour to be a small part of Laurelo in their work to guide families through their grief at the very start of the journey. And it's a real privilege and a real pleasure to be doing that work and have a part in it, and to see how Michael and Emma and the now 27 colleagues all share that commitment. And when you're working in Laurelo, you hear stories every day that resonate, and you create a sense of empathy, even for me, which is slightly at a distance, but you can have a real sense of empathy for those families and the journey they're on.
No, thank you. As I say, I think when there's that story behind it and that lived personal experience, it strives the service forward even harder and stronger to be even better. So you've both raised children who have suffered the death of a parent. How has that been for you both, and those, especially during those early days after the loss, and with your grief moving forwards? And starting with yourself, Matt, please.
The early, this was coming up to 10 years ago, and some aspects of that journey, the night that I had to tell the children that they were going to lose their mum, they're etched on my memory so clearly. I can remember them second by second. I can remember the words I used. I could remember their reactions. And then, as I'm sure is very common for other people who have been through this, and I'm sure it's probably something that Emma shares, there are parts of it that went by so slowly, and there are parts of it that went by very, very fast. I made a commitment to myself, and I guess to Kim and to my children, that I wanted to raise them. I wanted to carry on raising them in the same way that Kim had, which was with optimism, with a sense of fun and a passion for life. And I wanted to, without any tools, you're thrown into this world very, very suddenly, and I felt myself sort of self-guiding. The resources were very limited at the time. We're going back 10 years, which really speaks to the work that you're doing, John, in this area. So I found myself sort of self-guiding, trying to find this path. But my absolute determination was to turn two people out who could thrive, who could be optimistic, who would be hardworking, who would be good citizens, and would be positive about the world in spite of what had happened to them, and be resilient about the world in spite of what happened to them. And I was very struck by something that child bereavement say, is that often bereaved children will go on so often bereaved children will go on and be very successful, happy, optimistic, positive, forward-thinking adults, not in spite of their grief and their loss, but actually because of it. And they're two different phrases: in spite of your grief or because of it. And I just wanted to ensure that I could guide them through this and put all of my effort and energy into being present and working on that. And you'd to my mind, they are happy, positive, hardworking. They're now 22 and 20. You'd have to speak to them, John, to see whether I've done a good job or not.
Well, following our conversations when we met in London at the start of this year and learning about what they're up to now, I'm fairly confident I know the answer to that question. And before I hand over to Emma as well to get her views on that challenging question, for yourself as well, Matt, is it right as well? You launched a campaign following Kim's death, and is there a recent update with that as well? If we can just quickly go into that. So I know quickly isn't fair, but before we bring Emma into this question.
Yeah, I've been campaigning since Kim died. There was a criminal trial associated with Kim's death, which attracted a lot of media attention that I wasn't expecting, and that's a whole other world. You're dealing with your grief, your children's grief, and then suddenly there's a load of media interest. But I realized I had a platform at that time, so I've been campaigning for all of this time for new road safety laws, and I'm pleased to say that after 9 years of campaigning, and you know what that's like and how hard that is to convince politicians to do something, that the government have introduced all 4 laws into their police and crime bill. So unless something that I can't foresee happens between now and the summer, and there's always things that one can't foresee, but those 4 laws should be on the statute books by the summer, early autumn at the latest. So I would say to anyone, for me, it was a way to try and bring about something positive out of something tragic, and has brought me into contact with a lot of other families who've been through similar road tragedies as well. So yes, hopefully by the autumn, possibly even by the summer recess, those laws will be on the statute books.
I was going to say congratulations, but that's not the right word, really. I think it's more thank you for what you've done. I'm sure Kim would be very proud of your determination and non-stop approach in Parliament. As you say, I have awareness now what it's like, and it's slow. It's unless your heart is fully in it, you won't get it through. You have to be all in for the long run, don't you?
I learned. I wanted to go about it with politeness but firmness, and I learned that actually I also had to be slightly annoying as well. So I went at it by being annoying and persistent. And the great thing is, look, that you can turn something. You can bring something positive out of something tragic, and I wanted there to be a legacy for this, and you can get there. You can get there.
Thank you, Matt. And now over to Emma then. So back to that question about bringing up children when the other parent has died. What were the challenges that you faced, again, especially during those early stages, please?
I'm only 4 years in, John, so I'm feeling that I'm still in those early stages, and every day that presents a new hurdle, I think, to be fair. I'm very fortunate that Michael's obviously my partner, and he's helping me and supporting me a lot with the bringing up of the boys and the navigating the different challenges that come along. I think the resilience word is key. I think all I want to do is give my boys the the ability to be able to be resilient in every way and to be able to bounce back. And when something knocks them down, to get up and go again. And I think that's kind of what I've learned, and I've had to learn very quickly, is that you go into survival mode and you just go for it, and you don't let anybody get in your way, sort of thing. And I'm hoping I'm giving that to the boys. But every day presents a different challenge and another different hurdle that you don't think you never imagined you'd have to go through on your own. But yeah.
And have you found much useful resources and support networks for them, or is it a case of, are you just following your heart and doing what you feel is right? Which I think often it can be the best method, because we're all unique, we're all individual. So is that the answer, or do you pull resources from where you can get them, speak to the right people, or speak to people with similar experiences? What works for you?
So the day that we found out he was sick and he didn't have long left, I think I phoned about 40 helplines. I literally was just like, I don't know what to do. I'd shut off all my friends and family, and I just went on the internet and I just phoned everyone and anyone to share my story, I think. And it was in many ways it was quite cathartic to get it off my chest. But I don't even remember what most of them said to me. I cannot remember, because it was just all a blur. And I don't think I was actually ready for input. I just needed the world to know, God, this is like massive, this is huge. And it was panic. But I used the resources from Grief Encounter, who were really helpful for my youngest son. I tapped into the GP, and they gave me a support lady who signposted me. She was called a social prescriber, who signposted me to some wellbeing and mindfulness help, which actually was quite useful for me. The boys thought it was a nonsense and didn't want anything to do with it. There isn't what I have learned is there's not a one size fits all in this situation. Each of my boys are so different, and there isn't. You can't just get a bereavement counsellor in that's going to support them all consistently. That was a complete disaster when I tried that, by the way. It was a nightmare. They were all very different, and they're all at different stages of their grief, and they're all dealing with this still and managing it differently. So not having a one size fits all is definitely a big learning. But one of them's really into sport, so I threw him into his football a lot more, and he's behind him. And another one's really creative, so he had some art therapy, which worked really well for him. And another one's just a lot more reclusive and just wants to sit and think things over in his own time, and he'll come to me as and when he needs support. So I think they're the key things that I learned and the key resources that I tapped into. As much as it was lovely to have friends and family around, it was too painful, and I felt because I wasn't with their father when he passed away. But I was grieving, and I was like, it was a big loss in our lives, and I'd had all those years with him before together. I felt like a bit of a fraudster, and I didn't feel that I was worthy to be grieving. And so it was really hard. So I found shutting myself off from everyone was the best solution for me for that time.
No, thank you. And I think you've sort of said it really. Like, grief and our relationships, they're all unique. So therefore, the requirements will always be unique and different. What I will ask though is the communication that you used for your boys. How did you communicate the message to them? And how was that received? And again, did you communicate it a different way based on them being different? Or was it a case of you just managed to get through it in a messy way? Like what happened and what worked and what didn't work for those watching?
Yeah, it was really messy. So when we found out he was sick, he told me initially, and then he cut all communication. His new wife cut all communication with me, and he communicated with the boys via FaceTime or phone calls on their mobile phones or iPads or whatever. So I wasn't in control of any of his communication with them. So I think now I realise that he'd been telling them he was getting sicker and sicker, and then he'd go weeks or days where he didn't speak to them at all, and they'd get upset. And I tried to rationalise with them that maybe he was having treatment or whatever. And then I got a phone call. I remember we were sat watching Clifford the Big Red Dog in the cinema. The older boys didn't want to go and watch it, but we were trying to fill up time because we recognised it was coming to the end. And it was that horrible period between Christmas and New Year where nothing's going on. And we were sat in the cinema and my phone rang, and all three of the boys all knew at that moment that they all saw the phone call, and it was really weird. And we came out of the cinema, I didn't say anything. And we drove home and we got into the front room, and I thought they're in the safe space. I can talk to them. And I didn't need to. They just all knew, and we all sort of hugged, and then they all wanted to go in their separate ways, I think, and digest it in their own way. And then, that was, so the communication was just all a bit of a jumbled mess, unfortunately. Yeah.
But I think that's also life. Like, it can't be perfect.
What is
perfect?
Exist,
does it?
In this situation, exactly. There isn't perfect, is there? I don't think.
No. Well, thank you. And for yourself, Matt, I mean, the communication, obviously, with yourself, it was traumatic, it was sudden. So what was the communication like? And looking back, are there things that, you know, people who are watching this or listening to this, any advice you could give them about communication used?
So my situation was different in the sense that so Kim went out to work and you know, didn't come back. She was crossing the road at lunchtime on her lunch break in Old Street and was hit. So I got a call I got a call, I think, from a police officer to go to the hospital, and Kim was in surgery, so I had to wait a long time, and I was given the news that evening about 8:30, and was told that it was definite that we would lose her. So I was able to use as clear language with my kids that this loss was going to happen. There was no equivocation, so I was able to be clear with them. And Kim passed away a week later, and so I think that my language was clear. I have a habit of in a crisis of becoming, you know, like a lot of people, sort of hyper focused and very serious. And I think when I look back at my experience through grief, I became very focused and quite disciplined in my approach. And I suppose looking back, I could have chosen other words, could have given equivocation, but I didn't want to leave any room for doubt because I hadn't been given any room for doubt. But it's the most brutal thing, well, as Emma can attest to, it's the most brutal thing to have to share with your children. It's the worst, you know. I always think it's you know, I think it's the worst thing that worst news that a parent could ever have to impart to a child. But my goodness, it's a whole lot worse for the child to hear it. So, you know, that would be my lasting sort of memory is that, and advice is that, yes, this is terrible news to deliver, but deliver it with the clarity, with compassion, and understand that the person listening to it, this is changing their world, this is changing their brain chemistry at the very moment that you are delivering the words and they are processing it. Their brains are changing.
Yeah. No, thank you. That's really invaluable advice for people who are going through this. And people are going through it, as we know. Every 20 minutes in the UK, a parent dies. That's increased now. It was 22 minutes in the last 12 months. That's now increased. So this is something that we really need, and this education throughout society. And both yourself, Emma, and Matt, you have lived this experience. So thank you for being so honest with us and so helpful for people who are watching or listening. And I think it's really clear in how you do your work, the service you offer, how you want to help people, because it is a service, but you're there to help. And that's what I always say to people is like, how these people behind the services, the passion is very clear to see.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I have a huge favour to ask. Please click the thumbs up on the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, a huge thanks to our sponsors whose details are found in the video description just below. Thank you all.
And what you do, so part of what you do is about probate. And Michael, thank you for joining us as well. Be really interested now to get your sort of expertise now around probate. And I'm sorry to go from one extreme topic to another, but it's what you do. And I always think, as I've said before, we've gone through the understanding of what the company's based on, but actually what is probate? And even myself, who's around funerals and death every day, I'm still not totally clear, if I'm being honest, on probate. So Michael, could you update us and be really some clarity around how this works, please?
Yeah, no worries. So probate is basically about proving the ownership of the assets in someone's estate when they pass away and where those assets go after the death. So it's proving the will is mainly what probate is. And what that consists of on a kind of realistic level is it's a big form filling process, John, from start to finish, and depending on how many assets the person has and how much they are worth, depends on how many forms you need to fill in. And what people find is when you're grieving, you've just left someone that's unbelievably close to you and loved. The last thing you want to be doing is looking at forms and trying to fill them in to prove, one, you are who you are, and two, your husband, wife, sister, brother owned what they owned. And it's crazy. I mean, the whole journey is crazy when someone has just passed away and you may need to go through this process to release money to actually live on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So it's incredibly hard. And especially the older generation as well, where they've never done this before. They could have been with their partner, wife, husband, 60, 70 years. And now they have to deal with the UK law. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I've heard about some people who are trying to probate on their own. But often they will hit pitfalls with this.
Yeah.
So, can you give examples there where people can get confused with doing this information, doing this process?
So the probate forms are not the best in regard to they're very repetitive, and so people sometimes duplicate their answers in the wrong boxes. So it goes from let's say a £300,000 estate to a £600,000 estate overnight, when all they've done is duplicate their answers. So now the Inland Revenue, when they receive the documents, think, happy days, there's some tax applicable here. We'll speak to them about inheritance tax. Well, there's no inheritance tax. They've just done the incorrect answer because the actual forms are not very clear. And again, you only do probate maybe once or twice in your whole lifetime, if any. So you're not exactly au fait with the forms. So it's tough. So that's the most obvious mistake people make, is that they fill the forms in incorrectly, and that either affects their tax implications or it delays the process from start to finish.
Thank you. It's, I suppose, like in my world, funerals, like cremation forms.
Yeah,
really
exactly the same.
But then if someone was to hold one for the first time and go for the questions, it would be quite confusing.
Yeah.
So from the point of when someone dies then and they call your company, what do you do? What happens? And what forms do you complete?
Okay, so, well, first of all, we do what they call a triage call. So we have a triage team that give a call to the person that's inquired about probate. We first establish if there's a probate need, because sometimes people think, well, he's passed away, he needs probate. Or he's passed away, he's got a will, he doesn't need probate. So they ring us and we first of all establish whether or not they have a probate need. And then we then explain to them, if they do have a probate need, what probate is, what the journey consists of, and then what their options are. And actually, we do say to every single one of our families we speak to is that their first option is they can do this themselves. It is truly not rocket science, but there's 2, 3, 4 reasons why people don't do it themselves. And then we explain to them the cost of doing it themselves, and then we explain to them how we can possibly help them with our services, and then the costs of using us. So the point of the call and what we want to get from the end of the call is that the family are fully aware of what their options are, their choices are, and how much those choices cost to the penny. Yeah, our fees don't change. When we get off the phone, they find another £1 million. Our fees are our fees. Yeah, so it's very transparent. And after 13 plus years of doing this, when someone's grieving, the best thing you can do is be honest with them and transparent with them, because they're already living in a grey area. They don't need more grey answers.
Thank you. That's really clear. The only question I have is what is the point where probate's required? You said sometimes it's not required.
That's based on assets, John. So it's based on assets in the deceased name only. And every finance house has a probate threshold. So, for example, Barclays Bank, if you've got more than 50,000 in one bank account, that triggers the need for probate. If you have a house in your name, in the deceased name only, that triggers the need for probate. Yeah, or sometimes tenants in common where you own 50% share of the house, that could possibly trigger the need for probate. So every asset a person has, whether it be bank accounts, investments, premium bonds, shares, a property, they all have different thresholds that could trigger probate. But on that triage call is what we kind of pick that out and help the family understand if they do or they don't need probate.
So that's your fact finding.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
My only question is, like, regarding the house.
Yep.
Is that a certain value, or basically if you own a house, you need probate?
A house in deceased name triggers probate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And thanks again for being here to give us information, because, again, for you, it's straightforward. But for the majority of the population of the UK, we don't know. It's a new world, isn't it? So thank you. And Emma, as a director of the company, really interested to get your views and your wider vision for Laurelo. Do you see this as a service that goes beyond the documentation, the paperwork, the fact finding? What is there a bigger vision? Where do you see this?
I'm not going to answer this on my own, John. I'm going to call Matt and Michael to answer this with me, if that's all right.
Okay.
Because we're obviously joint directors, and Matt helps us with the culture and the vision and the strategy and the growth and everything. From my side, Laurelo's customer care, client care is so important, and it's we haven't got a huge marketing budget. We don't spend thousands on Google AdWords like a lot of the bigger players do. In fact, we've got a marketing budget of about £12.50, and we rely so heavily on referrals, word of mouth, and testimonials. And we've got an amazing network of introducers that love working with us, that see the value we bring their families that they've looked after, and refer more families to us and work to us. So that's my side is about the client care, and it's also about our culture as an organisation. And I will pass over to Matt to mention that, and maybe Michael could wrap up on the vision.
Thanks, Emma. I mean, the first thing to note about Laurelo, John, is that what you see on the outside with Laurelo, it is replicated on the inside and vice versa. What these guys have done, well, first of all, I help them with growth and strategy, but Emma and Michael make my job very easy, because I've never met two people, and I've been doing this a while, but I've never met two people so focused and so determined and so driven to build a business that is guided by doing the right thing for grieving families. And, I've been in a sales meeting this week, and every sales meeting, you look at the figures and things like that and how things have gone. But every single time it started with, have we done the right thing by families this month? Have we looked after our families this month? Then as long as we have, everything else comes after that. And the growth that they have achieved has been spectacular. The awards that they win are a testament for how we've gone about this. So the vision for Laurelo is to keep serving the families, because if you put the needs of the families first in this type of business, and I guess it's exactly the same with the funeral business, if you keep putting the needs of the families first, the growth will come after that. And just as Emma said, so brilliantly, so much of the work comes from referrals. There's no marketing to speak of. It's about referrals, it's about testimonials, and it's about building relationships within the industry, so that people keep recognizing Laurelo. So for me, to your point, the strategy is to keep putting families first, keep recruiting the very, very best people. I mean, Laurelo's gone from 5 people to 27 people in a very short space of time. And it's hard to recruit, right? We judge people on 3 things when they come for an interview. Cultural fit. Are they going to work well with the team? Technical ability. Can they do the job, or can we train them? And trust and integrity. Will they look after our families as well? And actually, we can train the technical ability, but the bits we can't train are that sense of trust and integrity when they're working with families. That's where we're spotting people who can connect, who can be empathic, can be professional, can be compassionate. So that's the strategy, is to find the very, very best people to keep doing the best thing. Growth will come from that.
In an authentic manner, isn't it then?
Yeah, and that's how, I have the pleasure of listening to the triage team, because 2/3 of the triage team operate out of the office, and we're getting it right when you listen to those first phone calls that come in. When I listen to, Michael still does some triage calls as well, and when I listen to Michael, the tone that he uses with families, it's just, I didn't need probate, but had I needed probate, had I picked up the phone and Michael had been at the other end, or any of our triage team, I just think that's the support that you would want. That's exactly that sort of clarity, that professionalism, but wrapped with compassion and kindness. That's exactly what you need. Yeah.
And I keep coming back to the podcast. At a time of sort of trauma or chaos, you want good people around you. If it's doing a funeral, if it's NHS, if it's hospitals, if it's hospices, whatever it is to do with death, dying and bereavement and grief, you want caring people around you.
I'll share with you something. I think I've shared it with Michael and Emma, but it speaks to that, because after Kim died, I don't think it comes back to that focus. I don't think I didn't cry to start with. I just thought, my kids have lost more. I need to focus on them. And I didn't cry for about 2 weeks, when people bring lots of food and things like that. Now, Kim did the cooking. I had my chores, but cooking was not one of them. There's a good reason for that, as my kids will speak to. But I didn't cry until I went to Sainsbury's, did the shop. My mum had bought me a slow cooker and a slow cooker cookbook. And I went to the till in Sainsbury's, and the woman behind the till just said, "Are you okay, love?" And it was that tiny, tiny sense of kindness from a complete stranger, and I just started crying. And then she, I told her what had happened, and that hadn't been shopping since I was a student, and she got up, got all the cooking magazines she could find, and gave them to me free.
Amazing.
And that's what is just that sense of kindness.
Yeah, simple acts but important ones. So, no, thank you, Matt, again for your honesty, and so to yourself, Michael, then for the sort of the vision to follow on from Matt and Emma.
Yeah, it's just the vision hasn't changed, John, since we've been going. I set this up 13 years ago or so now, and the vision hasn't changed. Is that I want to carry on being disruptive within the industry, make sure we are the best family-run independent probate company in the land, and give families choice and honesty and options when they need it the most. We are very good at that. Irrelevant of whether or not they instruct us or they don't instruct us, we don't really care. All we care about is that the families get the support, empathy, and information they need to make a valid choice when they're grieving. And that won't change.
Yeah, the core values, the core principles of the service you offer. No, thank you to all of you for your answers to that question. So moving forward then, around grief and support, do you think enough support is offered to families when it comes to the practical side of death, not just the emotional side?
When you hear, and when I do the triage calls, when you listen to the other triage team, categorically, there isn't. Because I would say out of 10 calls we get, 8 of them say, I have no idea what to do next. I don't know do I ring the bank? Do I ring a solicitor? Do I ring somebody? I don't know. Truly don't know. So is there offered enough support, education when someone passes away? The immediate thing, God no. No one has an idea. Not a clue. It's unbelievable because it's a thing that's guaranteed to happen, yet no one knows until it's too late. It's crazy.
So is that something that needs to be addressed, or is it, again, the nature of what you do around probate? So
I think it needs to be addressed at school, personally. The same way financial services should be addressed at school, so should death. They're going to happen. So why would you not talk about it? It's a formality. Why I don't get why it's not, but it's not. It clearly isn't.
Yeah.
No, thank you. And Emma, any additional points to add to that?
No, I concur. It's just listening to the calls that come in. It says it all. I mean, my personal experience, I had no clue what to do. I just I googled helpline, and I didn't know if I was if I needed to do anything like register anything or do anything for the boys, or it was completely clueless. So we definitely need some more help.
Yeah. For yourself, Matt, I'm aware from getting to know you, you're also involved in other services alongside Laurelo. And obviously you've spoken very openly about Kim's death and obviously with the campaign. How has the role allowed you to connect with others experiencing loss?
I guess my campaigning, the campaigning work has brought me into contact with a lot of other families who have experienced loss through road death. And I think one of the things that strikes me is that everybody's journey through that grief is very, very different. And that sounds like a cliche, but it's absolutely true. And then back in the early days, my kids were Grief Encounter helped my kids, and came into contact with other families who were going through the grieving process. And other organisation, there's an organisation called Widowed and Young, which I'm now too old for, because I think it's 50 and under. But they were very helpful. I went along to a few meetings, and I also found their website had some really good resources. But like Michael said, and like Emma said, I found it really difficult to find practical resources for me to help my kids. And it was actually the policeman, the police officer who investigated the circumstances around Kim's death. It was him who came to my house on after he'd sort of done all of the investigation side. He actually turned up on his day off, because I've been saying to him, I don't really know how to guide my kids through this. And he turned up with a lot of books around how to guide your children through grief after a road death. And I think that those books were put together by a charity called Break. And they were very good, had that clarity of language.
No, thank you. It's, the right people at the right time as well, stepping forward. So finally then, I'm really interested to get your thoughts from all of you on what does legacy mean to you, both in life and in the work that you do with Laurelo?
Gosh, for me, it's security and stability. It's just making sure I've built a safe space for the boys to be able to grow and thrive. So yeah, personally, that's that.
Yeah, for me, but bearing in mind, obviously the boys hear us talk a lot about work and situations that have arisen during the day. I feel like they've kind of got a lot more educated on death, which I would like to think has helped them process their own journey. So, ironically, it was. I feel like it's just something now that with Laurelo, it kind of helps support them in a kind of weird and wonderful way, subconsciously.
Yeah.
Because the youngest asks a lot of questions in regard to Laurelo. I think he thinks he owns it some days, but he needs that. He needs that to help him process his own journey, the fact that it does that, I think, is a positive thing. Is a real positive.
Yeah, yeah. Like you say, it probably answers lots of questions for him in a very indirect way.
Yeah.
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 No, brilliant. And for yourself, Matt?
I think for me it's twofold. I want, I was together with Kim for 27 years. We met when we were very young. We met when we were 18. So I had the great privilege of knowing Kim for 27 years. My kids only knew their mum for 10 and 12 years. So the legacy part for me is about keeping her memory alive in a way that is sensitive and remembers the very much the spirit of the person, the energy, the optimism, the positivity, the joy for life. And the other part of legacy is around making sure that Kim's not just remembered for the way she died and all the media around that, because of course it focused on only on the last part and way she died. So the legacy for me is getting these 4 laws passed will be a standing legacy that hopefully we can in some ways bring about a change in road safety. And so that's very much what legacy means for me.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And thank you for all your time today. It's really interesting to learn about the people behind the service And I think it's really clear to see why you're doing such great work in the space that you're in. Thank you all for your time, and I look forward to continuing the relationship as we all move forwards into hopefully a space where the UK becomes more comfortable in having these conversations.
Thank you, John.
I'd like to thank you, John, as well, for all the work you're doing. It's it's amazing, and we're really behind you. So thank you.
No, thank you all, and we'll speak to you soon.
I really hope you enjoyed the conversation with Laurelo. You can check out the interview with Dr. Emma Clare, where we talk about the importance of creating calmness during chaos just here. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to our channel. And again, a huge thanks to our sponsors for making this episode possible.